Hi, thank you for having us. My name is Ryan Green, and I'm the co-founder, along with Joshua Larson, of an indie game studio called Numinous Games. Now, Numinous is known for our emotional narrative projects, but we also work in serious games and now games accessibility.
Yes, thank you for having us. My name is Mike Perrotto, and I'm the development manager here at Numinous Games, and we're excited to share with you a new accessible games initiative focused on fun. We're also going to spend some time today talking about a few lessons we've learned as we become intentional about designing for accessibility.
But before we begin, we're going to talk about some happy things today, and we're going to talk about some hard things. And what I'm going to share next is emotionally difficult because it is the story of the loss of a loved one. And if today isn't a good day to dwell on loss, then I'd invite you to come back and listen to our talk on another day. Um, I also wanted to mention that if you've heard us talk about this subject at a previous conference this year, much of the material is the same. However, we hope you'll stick with us because we've included updates and new findings in this talk. Okay, well, with that, I'd like to start by sharing with you a story about a little boy named Joel, and he's someone I love to talk about. This is Joel. He had my heart from the day he was born. He was my third son, and when he turned 1, he was diagnosed with a very rare brain cancer. Now, Joel may not have grown old enough to change the world, but he certainly changed my world. And his life was a force of gravity that pulled me and everybody who loved him into his orbit. Joel opened my eyes to the transformative power of caring for a child with special needs, needs that plead with the world around us to slow down. Loving him demanded that I slow down too. Loving him demanded that I care. Loving him made me brave. I had no choice in the matter. Love dictated it. Joel lived in the spaces where people are often afraid to look, but Joel's life turned us into people who refused to look away. Joel's fight with terminal illness, vision impairment, motor impairment, seizures, significant hearing loss, paralysis, cognitive delay, speech impairment, and a host of specters that threatened his life awakened me to a world of Joels, children who are all grappling with significant obstacles while facing uncertain futures. Instead of starting a nonprofit to fund research, at Numinous Games to process our personal loss, we made art. We designed a video game honoring just one life and how he changed us. And it's easy for us to wonder if that was the lesser choice. I mean, shouldn't we have focused on the bigger picture? Sometimes thinking small has a big impact. It's because of our choice to love and design for the one, Joel, that we're here speaking to you today.
In the months after our video game, That Dragon Cancer, was released, a health executive reached out to us. He had read about our story in Wired magazine and wondered if we might tell our story at a national conference his company was hosting for rare diseases. We readily agreed. Then he asked us if we'd like to create a project for the neuroendocrine cancer community, which we called Galaxies of Hope. Designing a game to honor one boy compelled one executive to ask us to serve many others.
And a few years later, this executive came to us again and asked us if we could use games to serve another group, children with spinal muscular atrophy, a rare, debilitating, and degenerative disease that causes motor neuron death. Designing to honor one boy whose illness separated us from him led us to being asked to serve thousands more children whose bodies keep them from the things they love, like play. Play was how we connected with Joel. We couldn't connect with him in all the ways that we wanted to. He was nonverbal. We wanted to know him. We would have given anything to connect with Joel in new ways through play. And so we agreed again, happily. Loving the one, advocating for the one, and designing for the one so that we all can connect and draw closer to each other is how we change worlds. Today, we'd like to introduce you to a project we call the Playability Initiative, which seeks to connect kids and their loved ones through play.
The Playability Initiative has a funny name, but serious heart. This project is a collaboration between Numinous Games, the Able Gamers Foundation, the Family Video Game Database, and Games for Change in service to the spinal muscular atrophy community and beyond. This initiative was made possible by that one executive, his invitation to work with his team, and the financial support of the company he works for, Novartis Gene Therapies.
Through the sponsorship of Novartis Gene Therapies, this initiative seeks to collaborate with the community. Numinous will be collaborating with the SMA and the broader disability communities to design a one-button multiplayer adventure game for kids. What does this mean? It means it's a seriously fun game that can be played with a single button input. We're calling it Painted Waters, where adventure creates. For some children with spinal muscular atrophy, Painted Waters may be the first video game they play that was designed specifically for them in mind. And as you know, many games are adapted to players with disabilities after the fact. We're collaborating with Able Gamers to not only bridge the gap between games and their players after a game has been created, but to consider all players in the design process from the very beginning. What if, instead of starting with what the majority of players were capable of, we started with what a single player could do? What if this one player could only move one finger? Could we make a game that's fun for everyone based on the abilities of the one? What if this same game helped players and their families learn more about the types of games and adaptive technology that were available to them? We're working with Able Gamers to design a special game mode inside Painted Waters that will help parents, caregivers, therapists, and educators assess what their child can do and point these adult advocates to adaptive technology best suited for their child's needs and the existing games that they'll love playing.
The next aim of this initiative is to connect players with the games they'll love. Once players are connected to the adaptive technology best suited for them, they'll need games to play. When a parent of a child with a disability tries to find a suitable game for their child, as you all know, it isn't as easy as looking for the E for everyone rating. Everyone usually doesn't mean their child. Everyone is not the one. Each child has unique abilities. Where is the labeling that says what kind of manual dexterity is required for gameplay, or how much rapid motor function is needed, or whether or not eye tracking is supported? Finding an accessible game is not as simple as a label indicating a game is compatible with adaptive technology. Parents need specific details relating to their unique child's abilities. This is why we've teamed up with Andy Robertson, a games journalist out of the UK who's an expert in family gaming. His work encourages parents to meaningfully engage with their children through gaming by providing them resources and recommendations through his various popular social media channels. Andy's latest project, the Family Video Game Database, is growing into a treasure trove of curated game lists and powerful search features that connect adult advocates and their children with games they'll love. Thanks to the support of the Playability Initiative, Andy and his database partner Rich have been hard at work enriching the datasets in the database to include a wealth of accessibility search filters. Andy's also been working with accessibility experts in the community to expand the database listings with accessibility data on over 150 games. Thanks to the community collaborators, this list is growing. And if you have a favorite set of accessible games you'd like to see added to the database, we'd like to hear from you.
We're also seeking to engage members of the SMA community to share their experiences in gaming. Jack Friedman, one of our collaborators, is writing blogs about his gaming life, covering subjects like why he doesn't like timers in games and how designers can consider players like him. If you're interested in connecting kids to games, encouraging creative expression in the disabled community through digital tools, or inspiring game designers to think inclusively, we want to hear from you.
Throughout the life of this initiative, while we as game designers learn how to serve our players, we will also seek to challenge inclusive designers of the future to consider individual players and their abilities. Numinous will be collaborating with Games for Change in this year's Student Design Challenge. Inclusive design is important across all issues, whether designing games to educate players on the issues that affect our environment, our society, and our policies. Inclusive designers look for ways to draw all people into the conversation. Through the sponsorship of Novartis Gene Therapies, Numinous will be working with Games for Change to create teaching materials that convey what we're learning as new inclusive designers through our own learnings and through initially learning from experts in the field like the Able Gamers Foundation.
We look forward to collaborating with you and serving a community of players who will change the world through their play together, their empathy for each other, and their creativity to apply inclusive design thinking to all that they do. We'd like to thank Novartis Gene Therapies for their support in this endeavor, and we look forward to sharing more with you in the year to come.
In the last half of this talk, we'd like to share with you some of what we're learning as newly minted inclusive designers. We want to show you what happened when we asked ourselves, what if we start by designing for one player and their abilities? First of all, we're not experts at inclusive design, yet. Our industry is seeing encouraging growth in accessibility, most notably with the wealth of accessibility features included in the blockbuster game The Last of Us 2. But accessibility in games has a long way to go. For change to occur, small developers like ourselves and large developers need to start considering all of their players when designing games. We expect to fail, we expect to learn, we're listening, and we're committed to sharing that journey with you.
And so today we'd like to share a little bit about what our team is learning while designing for The One. In our case, that means folks like my friend Zach, who hasn't played games for years, and the children we've met working on this initiative, some who can't breathe without a trach, some who can only slightly move their fingers, some who play with their eyes. The first design tip I want to share with you is to encourage you to find the one to design for. Parents, therapists, educators are all evaluating our games with a particular player in mind, and that player has a name. This is Zach. He writes children's books. When I was first starting discovery work on this initiative, I thought, hey, this guy that comes into the local coffee shop has cerebral palsy and writes children's books about kids with disabilities. Maybe he'd be a potential collaborator. After introducing myself, however, Zach and his aide John became fast friends, and we've spent many hours over the last year talking about family and films and the stuff that ticks him off and the stuff that makes him happy and his ambition as a creative. I asked Zach early on if he played video games, and he said he didn't. He used to play, but when he found out that his controller wasn't really controlling the games he thought he was playing, he stopped. He hadn't played in over a decade. I asked him, if I made a game for you, would you be willing to try it out? Because I have this sweet new Xbox adaptive controller and I make games. He readily agreed. He told me he used to like downhill skiing and playing ice hockey when he was growing up. But even in those real life sports, he faced the same frustration of a lack of autonomy. He didn't have as much control as the people helping him did. And so in my free time, while working on this initiative, I also made a 2-button air hockey game and a downhill skiing prototype. Now, I'd love to say that these playtests went perfectly, and Zach was able to cruise elegantly downhill on his new virtual skis, and our fast-paced hockey game was nail-biting to the end. But that's not how it went. The prototypes were buggy, and as a novice inclusive designer, my implementation was flawed. But what I remember most is the smile on Zach's face. He'd been reintroduced to gaming, games built for him to play, and I made a new friend and a ready collaborator who could bring his writing to life in new ways through games that we could make together. And we've since been conspiring on new game ideas, and I look forward to Zach's collaboration. Through working on prototypes for Zach and prototypes for kids with SMA, I learned something pretty obvious, but I still think it needs to be said. Designing for adaptive technology doesn't automatically make a game accessible. In this early prototype, I designed a digital instrument for kids to play. Moving a joystick around in 8 directions allowed kids to play music by hitting notes. I focused on adapting the joystick movement, patting myself on the back for allowing the player to interact with touch and adaptive joysticks and eye gaze control. However, I had neglected one-button players by only giving them the ability to tell the animals to sing. Some of my players could compose beautiful jazzy riffs, but some of my players could only conduct the choir by pressing start and stop.
It's often not good enough to simply make a game that works with a mouse pointer or a single switch. You have to know how the adaptive technology that connects the player to the computer works in their own homes. In a recent failed playtest with Jack, and it was definitely our fault, we had failed to account for the fact that just because an eye tracking system can move the pointer doesn't mean it will. Often, eye tracking systems have dashboards that sit on top of the programs on the computer desktop. These dashboards control the mouse and keyboard inputs to the computer, as well as launch and switch between programs. In Jack's case, his system didn't have a way to simply move the mouse pointer without clicking. In our preparation, we had failed to consider the adaptive technology in use by the player and how to configure it properly. The game could already be played with only a mouse pointer or only a single switch, but we needed to know how the player would use their computer to understand the player.
This leads us to our next design tip. Examine your inherited ability bias.
Many of our favorite fighting, shooting, driving, and platforming games are less about play and more about mastering difficult interfaces with dexterity. They're hand puzzles for the most dexterous among us. With players who can do this, it's no wonder I can never last more than a few minutes in Fortnite, and I really would like to play Fortnite.
Knowing that I needed to avoid the trap of designing for dexterity, I focused on simple controls. I researched adaptive technology, special ordering custom 3D printed joysticks, but I brought in my own inherited bias as well by designing for joystick-based movement. Here you see, in my play tests, some players were able to navigate the joystick or touchpad to make the unicorn draw pictures on the pond. But for my eye-tracked player, I had neglected to support gaze-only input. Since they couldn't use any of the fancy switches I brought, they couldn't look and press a button like the game required.
Likewise, players who could use a one-switch setup weren't able to move as freely as their joystick-powered peers. Our assumptions about most players being able to play neglected the one player who plays with a single button. Thankfully, Numinous recently hired another talented designer who recently evaluated our early prototypes. His name is Hayden, and he had the following observation. Prioritizing joystick movement makes using adaptive input tedious and annoying. Hayden isn't one to mince words.
And so, back in May of this year, he recommended we pause our design with our mountain of ideas and mechanics and themes for this new game we're making, and asked us the following. What does the player want to do, and what is preventing them from doing it? So we decided to zero in on the movement problem. If some players are able to play with only a single switch, do we care about their play experience? And if we do, then is joystick-based movement really a core value of our game? What will players want to do, and what is preventing them from doing it? When we focus on what most players could do, instead of focusing on one player, we mourn our losses when we can't use the flashy interface or the fancy adaptive controller. But when we focus on the one, we create a gift for them that isn't about us at all. And when we do it well, it serves everyone.
Hayden introduced us to some new references, and we explored new ideas on how to design our maps. What would happen if we allowed players to focus on their desired destination rather than just their next step? We looked at bus routes and footpaths. We thought about planning paths by bouncing characters around an environment, or using line of sight to determine the next destination based on 8 cardinal directions. When we thought about it, we realized that we don't plan our steps in real life, we plan our destinations, and for many of us, our movement is as involuntary as a heartbeat. Why do we value joystick movement so much in our games? Sometimes joysticks just get in the way.
As we prototyped, we started building off of each other's ideas. If we could let go of our expectation that free-form movement is the best for everyone, what would grid movement look like? How many options should we offer at any given time? What if we moved on the outlines of the grid rather than from the center of the spaces? In this first example, every time the sphere changes directions, the player has hit their button. This led to some very fast and fun movement that didn't require the player to press a button at every junction of the map. In the second example, collecting items wouldn't require players to press multiple buttons. It could be as easy as encircling them. When your player avatar is a bug who always tends to turn left, collecting an item is as simple as pointing the bug in the right direction, or in this case, the left direction. In this third example, we changed the shape of the grid. Instead of hexes, we had squares. With only one decision, left or right, players could navigate the entire map efficiently. These prototypes led us to the conclusion that semi-autonomous vehicles can be really fun to drive. We take autonomous vehicles for granted all the time in daily lives, from auto-steering cars, taxis, and scooters, to taking the time to torment robo-vacuums. Total control does not necessarily equal fun.
When we really looked at our grids, we realized the shape of the paths between the points didn't really matter, so we bent them into fun shapes. We also realized if you're not driving the car, in this case the orange ball as it drives along its path, maybe the fun could be found in chasing cars. In this first example, the small white sphere follows the orange car. When the player presses the button, the player stops following the car. When they press it again, the player's sphere follows once more. We realized the fun was trying to capture the big spheres in the middle by anticipating the new path they will take when they choose to begin following the car again. In the second, we added intersections. Press the button to take a turn at the intersection, follow or don't follow the car when it's outside of the intersection. In the third, I channeled one of my favorite activities growing up, kneeboarding. The player presses the button to use their momentum to swing wildly around corners, or pressing the button to follow peacefully, all without controlling the steering of the vehicle. This led to an exciting aha moment. We realized the fun is in the space between the paths, not in following the path itself. So we fashioned a mini golf prototype. In these prototypes, one button tap breathes in deeply, the next button tap blows our little bug who is serving as the golf ball in the direction of the hole. We discovered a prototype that was challenging and fun for all players, and all playable with one button.
This revelation seemed worth exploring further, and so we broke down why this particular set of game mechanics works so well for one-button play. Golf clubs aren't the only device that moves balls towards a target on a mini golf course. There are multiple paths, simple random number generator devices that interfere with the ball's path, and there are obstacles that remain static or they move the ball. Mini golf players typically move on paths on the outside of the playfields, but there are often beautiful or challenging nooks and crannies to explore on the course, or in some cases, out of bounds. Holes have targets, but sometimes it's the bonus targets that are the most fun, activating water features, or windmills, or hidden paths.
Hayden, inspired by Plinko, Pachinko, Pinball, Peggle, and other marble-centric games, has been designing physics experiments to discover fun and engaging playfield designs, with just the right amount of balance between strategy and chaos to move objects from one side of a field to the other using gadgets activated by the player. My favorite prototype here is in the bottom left, the Y-shaped obstacles. Removing one allows the other obstacles to fall and wedge together, creating a challenging and changing playfield to move many objects at once with a simple tap of a button.
Brock and I have been taking what we've learned through working with our collaborators about player input and UI and UX essentials, and from Hayden's design notebooks to start to lay out some prototype level designs. We're looking forward to our playtests in the coming months with Playability Initiative Facebook group members and our collaborators. We look forward to Painted Waters becoming a relaxing and a fun place for all ages and abilities to express their own creativity, problem solving, and desire for adventure as they play together.
This leads us back to Hayden's original challenge to us. Instead of dwelling on player movement, he challenged us to find the fun.
We'll leave you with this. My bias could only be confronted by knowing the players I'm serving and by designing for them instead of to meet my own needs. By gathering a team willing and able to challenge assumptions, we continue to uncover design bias together. And as one of the co-founders of Numinous, I recognize we have a long way to go as we seek new collaborators, listen, learn, and practice inclusive design. Loving Joel gave me new eyes to see beyond my own world. And to no one's surprise, the new friends we're meeting as we venture out on this new journey are worthy of consideration too. Love dictates it. Thank you.